make. Das ist von Martinus. Make.
From 1992 to 1996, Armenia's energy sector was in a dire condition. Households had electricity supply for only 2 to 4 hours a day. In those days, people would arrange their lives around the electricity supply schedule. Each illuminated minute was precious as gold. People had to get everything done within 1 or 2 hours. Cook their meals, heat the house, do the washing and ironing, and watch television. In 1996, round-the-clock electricity supply was restored, but the energy sector had serious problems. Huge electricity losses, low collection rate of bills, and unreliable service. These were issues requiring immediate action. The direct and indirect subsidies allocated for the energy sector were about $140 million a year, about 11% of the country's gross domestic product. In those years, the Armenian government, with the help of the World Bank and other donors, began implementing major reforms in the sector. Armenergo, the giant state-owned entity, was unbundled and replaced by separate independent companies responsible for electricity generation, transmission, and distribution. An independent Public Services Regulatory Commission was established. Cost recovery tariffs were set. The Settlement Center and the Electric Power System Operator were established. The sector opened up for private investment. Most of the power generation plants and the distribution grid were privatized. Service quality indicators were defined. A new era of development began for the energy sector. The crisis years, when the electricity inspector could arbitrarily cut off supply to a consumer, became history. Inspector Martin Petrosyan has been working for the electric networks of Armenia since 2006. During his working day, Martin has almost no interaction with residents. He records the electricity meter readings, based on which consumers are billed at the end of each month. Martin's phone number is written on the meter boxes. People can call the inspector when they have a problem. But there are almost no cases when someone disagrees with the meter reading. Payments for billed electricity are almost 100%.
There used to be problems between inspectors and residents. We don't have these problems now. Residents have realized that it is better to pay on their own and have the payment receipt at hand.
5 years ago, the western branch of the electric networks of Armenia used to receive 15 customer complaints a day. In 2010, this branch, serving hundreds of thousands of customers, has received only 43 such complaints. Now, an automated system recording electricity consumption is being installed here. Electronic meters exclude the human factor from the process. Meter readings are sent directly to the settlement center.
If we compare the system in our district to what we had in the past, the tendency towards reduction of electricity losses is evident. We have around 8 substations which operate with this system. The average annual loss, depending on the season, used to be 15, 20, or 25%. These numbers are down to about 3 to 5%. I think the numbers say it all.
The outcomes of the reforms were remarkable, and the 24-hour reliable supply of electricity became a reality. Electricity losses were reduced more than twofold. Collection rates doubled. The annual subsidy of $140 million was eliminated, and the energy sector transformed from a huge burden on the state budget to one of its biggest taxpayers.
I would say that the reforms in the energy sector yielded impressive results, and the sector is in a much better shape compared to other branches of our economy, both in terms of service quality and safety and reliability of operations.
The end of the energy crisis in Armenia is often referred to as a past stage. That is how rap singer H.T. Haiko, brought up during the energy crisis years, titled his song, Gone Period. Heriknaz Harutyunyan was editor of the youth magazine 21 in the years of the energy crisis. The office did not have round-the-clock electricity supply. She had to work from home sometimes.
It was cold and dark at home, horrible conditions. We would light a kerosene heater and sit next to it. But how long can you edit texts sitting by a kerosene heater under the candlelight? We were damaging our eyesight. So I began to edit standing, and that became a habit. Standing very close to the window for more light, I'd read the texts and edit them with a pencil at hand.
The best present one could get in those years was a good candlestick or a small kerosene heater. Heriknaz has kept hers as a memory of the crisis years. The end of the crisis was the beginning of a new era for Armenia, which brought along new priorities: energy security and reliability, electricity supply affordability, good quality and safe heating. The electricity supply issue was resolved, but heating was still a problem. The district heating system inherited from the Soviet Union had collapsed. People used wood or liquid fuel for heating. Socially vulnerable families would often burn their household waste. People would use handmade furnaces or electric heaters. This was not only a more costly option for heating, but also a dangerous one. Violations of safety regulations often resulted in explosions, fires, and poisonings. The government of Armenia, with the support of the World Bank and other donors, developed and adopted in 2002 the Urban Heating Strategy. The World Bank extended a $15 million credit in 2005. The project was implemented by the Renewable Resources and Energy Efficiency Fund, which was tasked to introduce safe, possibly affordable, and environmentally clean heating systems. The project included the urban schools and multi-apartment buildings. The main beneficiaries were the vulnerable groups and the middle class.
We used to have a furnace which was placed right here. It's a 3-room apartment. The gas stove would heat the kitchen, but what about the living room? We could not afford a furnace here and an electric radiator there, and the children wouldn't get warm anyway.
Lena Navasardyan's house is being renovated. In a modern Armenian household, one of the mandatory parts of home renovation is the installation of a local heating system. Lena is an accountant. She doesn't earn enough to be able to make an upfront payment for the installation of the heating system. She has taken a loan from the bank. Akba Credit Agricole Bank is a participant of the World Bank Urban Heating Project. In the course of 4 years, loans have been provided to more than 6,000 borrowers.
By the way, they are very responsible borrowers. This suggests that our debtors truly understand the importance of these loans, that they solve a real social issue. In many cases, people take into account their ability to pay when considering what type of heating system and boiler to install.
The heating loans are in great demand. Middle-income citizens often prefer this mechanism of financing for heating and hot water supply. And this is a new tool for the banking system to attract customers.
We directed the $4.2 million earmarked under the project through private banks, giving them maximum freedom to make decisions. We only had a few requirements: to use environmentally clean and safe, as well as energy-efficient equipment.
The money received as loan repayments is re-lent to other families as heating loans. This creates a multiplier effect. The project helps set safe and secure heating standards in Armenia. This mechanism will ensure the project's sustainability in the future, even without external funding.
The project is not over yet. We still have work to do. We need to make sure that each resident in Armenia can decide what kind of heating they need, central or local, what kind of energy source they should use, with what kind of results, and how they will pay for it.
Shops selling local heating systems and offering installation services emerged quickly. Demand created supply. In 2004, only 13% of households used gas for heating. Now this percentage is about 6 times higher. This growth would have been impossible without the rapid pace of gasification. As of January 1, 2002, Armenia had 102,000 gas consumers. In 2010, the number of consumers has been more than 600,000. 94% of Armenia's territory is gasified.
We are convinced that without any additional income, the financial situation of each household improves when it gets access to gas supply, because gas is the cheapest of all other options for household heating.
When heating systems are installed, special attention is paid to the safety issue. The number of explosions and fires due to the use of handmade or bad quality heaters has decreased over the years. In 2005, there were 37 such incidents per 10,000 gas connections, while in 2010, that number decreased to 10. Gas consumption safety norms and regulations were developed and are already in use in multi-apartment buildings. Although gas heating is the cheapest and safest option, many households in Armenia cannot afford gas connection or installation of safe heaters. About 34% of Armenians' population is poor. The Urban Heating Project, or the World Bank, and the Global Partnership on Output-Based Aid provide grants to vulnerable households living in multi-apartment buildings to have gas connections and install heaters.
We've come to install a heater. We will install it here.
The Vardanyan family of 6 lives on the first floor. It is humid here and cold in winter.
The winter was long and cold. The children were small, 3 years old and 5 years old, and a newborn. It was tough. We barely managed using electricity for heating.
The Vardanyans, who live in Sevan, one of the coldest cities of Armenia, have installed a gas heater only this year. They received support from the Urban Heating Project, which is being implemented in 32 cities in Armenia. Households enrolled in the Paros Family Benefit Program receive safe gas heaters of European production, and their apartments are connected to the gas system through funding from the project and the Global Partnership on Output-Based Aid. The mechanism of output-based aid was innovative in Armenia. Contractors were paid only after the output was produced. That is, after verification that the poor households actually had gas supply in their apartments. In the course of the project, heaters were installed in more than 8,000 apartments, and these were connected to the gas system.
I think the World Bank has chosen the right niche, the socially vulnerable, people who don't have the startup capital to become gas consumers. By providing heaters and paying for gas connections, the World Bank has made a serious investment in gasification in the country. This may not make a big difference in the number of consumers and in the market, but it is a very good qualitative indicator.
79-year-old Gohar Harutyunyan is very happy to have gotten rid of her old furnace. The new heater is much cleaner and more efficient.
I've used it and I'm happy with it. The heater has 5 heating levels. If I put it on maximum, it will get too hot. I've kept it on level 4 the whole winter, and it's been warm throughout.
When starting the Urban Heating Project, the fund conducted a survey in the urban communities of Armenia. The 2006 survey results showed that 42.5% of the population heated their homes by burning wood. In 2010, that number has dropped to just 2%. The collapse of the district heating system had an immediate impact on the schools of Armenia. Schools would close for about 2 months in winter. Even after they reopened, either the number of classes would be reduced or the class hours would be cut to 20 minutes, because in the cold season it was impossible to provide adequate temperature or quality education in the classroom.
I remember that the teachers had a big shawl, both Ms. Zabelian and Ms. Shahnazarian. They would wrap themselves up in that shawl, kneel before the furnace and blow, and fill it with pieces of wood. It was tough. We would switch places so that all of us could keep warm. We would try to sit close to the furnace to stay warm.
For the students of Dilijan School No. 2, cold classrooms have become a past memory because a heating system has been installed here. It is one of the 104 schools having benefited from the urban heating project. Artur Hakopian, a maintenance worker at Yeregnazor School No. 2, does regular checkups in the summer months to make sure that the boiler house is ready for the winter.
The cost is fine, it's good. Everything has been installed well. We consume 12 to 13,000 cubic meters of gas each season, and it's enough to heat the school very well.
Karine Markarian is a teacher at the school. She remembers how just 3 years ago they would have to finish a 45-minute class in 20 minutes. Her heavy coat would make it difficult for her to write on the blackboard. The oil furnaces would only slightly change the air in the classroom, but not the temperature.
Our school now works the way it used to work back in the years when I was a pupil. It is the heating that has enabled our school to return to full-time academic and extracurricular activities.
The rehabilitation of the heating system in schools was implemented in 2 stages. First, boiler houses were built in 97 schools. Then, the savings under the project were used to install heating systems in 7 schools for children with special educational needs.
The peculiarity of these schools is that children live here, and it's very important for their health and education that we provide adequate conditions.
Volodya Kanayan is a maintenance worker at Varashapat Special School No. 2. He still keeps the kerosene heater in the storage room.
These are our old furnaces. We used these in the past. Now they've installed a new heating system. Everything is good.
The school not only has a heating system now, but also a shower room for the children. Now it's easier for children with physical disabilities to live and study in this building.
We host children with disabilities. In the past, we used to heat water in the kitchen to take care of the children. Now the shower room has made our work easier.
All 104 schools where boiler houses and heating systems have been installed are in different regions of Armenia. There are still funds left in the project, which allows financing the construction works in an additional 11 schools in order to keep them warm. In these schools, in addition to construction of the heating systems, windows are being replaced or renovated, and the roofs and cellars are being thermo-insulated. Construction workers from the company Z Profile, working in Harazdan School No. 12, are among the first to have applied innovative energy-efficient technologies.
We not only provide heating to this school, but also do energy efficiency works. These will allow the school to spend less on fuel. On the other hand, we all know that carbon emissions destroy the ozone layer, and this is a global issue. At least on our part, on the part of Armenia as a small country, the emissions can be reduced and they won't damage the environment.
Renewable energy projects are of great significance for Armenia. The country's own energy resources are limited. One of the lessons learned of the past energy crisis is that the local resources should be used efficiently in order to ensure the country's energy independence and security. The Metsamor nuclear power plant, the thermal power stations in Yerevan and Harazdan, as well as the hydro cascades of Vorotan and Sevan Harazdan, are the main producers of electricity in Armenia. The nuclear power plant produces about 40% of the total electricity. Another 30% is produced by the thermal stations, and the remaining 30% is produced by the hydro stations. This meets all of Armenia's current needs. However, the fuel for the nuclear plant and the thermal stations is imported. Fluctuations in the global fuel prices and possible interruptions of fuel imports jeopardize the reliability of electricity supply in the country.
One could say that the development of renewable energy in Armenia is of triple importance. First, it uses local energy sources. Second, it uses renewable energy sources. And third, it uses clean sources of energy.
Water, the sun, wind, and biomass are sources of renewable, or in other words, clean energy. In particular, the market for small hydropower stations is well developed in Armenia. The government of Armenia has created clear incentives for investment in this area. The law on energy mandates the power distribution grid to buy the electricity generated by small hydropower stations for 15 years after they become operational. The Public Services Regulatory Commission has established feed-in tariff for the electricity produced by the hydropower plants.
The feed-in tariffs enable developers, based on the technical parameters, to assess whether it makes business sense to invest without having to rely on any state official. And the guarantee of 15 years of purchase meant that the developers could confidently invest in this area.
94 small hydropower stations are operational in Armenia, with about 124 megawatts of total capacity. That meets about 3% of Armenia's domestic demand for electricity. An additional 65 hydropower stations are currently under construction. After they start operating, the small hydropower stations will meet 6% of the total internal demand for electricity. 27 of the currently operating small hydropower stations were constructed under the World Bank's Renewable Energy Project. Their total capacity is 43 megawatts.
Three things are needed for success: legislation, tariffs, and access to long-term financing. The project targeted this third factor by providing long-term revolving funds through a universal credit organization.
The World Bank provided a $5 million credit to ensure investments in the sector. The project received co-financing from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which invested an additional $7 million, as well as from the Cascade Universal Credit Organization, the owner of which, the Kafesyan Family Foundation, invested $3 million. As a result, a $15 million loan package was formed, the successful allocation of which attracted other donor financing in this sector. Many commercial banks are now providing loans for the construction of small hydropower stations.
We have a small gardening firm. We thought that since we were bringing in irrigation water, we could also build a hydropower station on that water flow.
The company Jagatsi Dzor, which owns the Gokht 1 and Gokht 2 cascade of hydropower stations, has taken the risk and received a loan to make an investment in this area. The stations built on the Gokht stream of the Azat River operate for only 4 months a year. Besides, in order to connect the hydropower stations to the high-voltage electric grid, the company constructed a 10-kilometer-long power transmission line. The Yeregnadzor small hydropower station, built on the Yeregis River in the Vayots Dzor region, has a 1.8 megawatt capacity. To operate the hydropower station, 15 new jobs opened for the residents of the neighboring villages.
There is a lot of construction of small hydropower stations going on in Vayots Dzor now, and it is very efficient. First of all, even the smallest hydropower station creates 7 new jobs.
The Artavan 1 small hydropower station is under construction now. It will start operating in a month and will have a 2.8 megawatt capacity. Armen Mikhaelian from the village of Artavan has been working here for a year. He hopes that he will be offered a job again after the construction is complete.
We are employed now, which is good. If I did not have this job, I would have to go and cultivate my land and breed the cattle, barely managing. It isn't good going abroad for seasonal work either. You leave your family behind and your children unattended. It's not good. It's better to work here than abroad.
These micro power stations create a lot of jobs in very many communities. And here I understand there will be 8 to 10 jobs created in the local community. So this is an extra benefit. So you generate energy, you diversify your source of energy at a very cost-competitive rates. You generate electricity through renewables, which is a big plus for climate change, but also in terms of economics.
The World Bank and the Renewable Resources and Energy Efficiency Fund work towards securing continued investments in clean energy. A $3 million grant from the Global Environment Facility was allocated to identify Armenia's renewable energy potential and attract private investments in this sector. The project designed the scheme for small hydropower stations and developed model business plans and guidelines for the renewable energy sector. This information is now available on the website of the Renewable Resources and Energy Efficiency Fund at www.r2e2.am. Some of the results of the project are the Geographic Information System, GIS, and the Database for Renewable Energy Resources. Despite remarkable achievements, Armenia's energy sector faces new challenges. One of the main electricity generators in the country, the Metsamor nuclear power plant, is set to close. The old energy units of the Yerevan and Hrazdan thermal power stations will also stop operation. Depending on the future growth of demand, Armenia will need an additional 850 to 1,350 megawatts of electricity generation capacity. At the same time, the system's reliability is vulnerable to possible interruptions in supplies of imported fuel, as well as to aging transmission and distribution grids. And finally, the price of imported natural gas is continuously rising, which inevitably leads to increases in the cost of heating and electricity supply tariffs. The entry of new generation capacities into the system will also contribute to rising costs. The affordability of energy tariffs is becoming an ever-growing problem, especially for the poor. These challenges can undermine the achievements in Armenia's energy sector. In order to ensure a reliable and affordable energy supply system, energy saving and efficiency is key in Armenia.
We should not produce as much as we want, but rather as much as we need. And this difference between how much we want and how much we need is the energy efficiency that we must achieve. Otherwise, this will lead to increase in tariffs and decrease in reliability and the level of energy security. This approach must be applied countrywide so that we can have a more reliable and secure system.
According to the International Energy Agency, it is 3 times more expensive to produce 1 kilowatt per hour of electricity than to conserve it. Thus, energy conservation, too, is a source of energy. A 2008 World Bank study concluded that through energy efficiency improvements, Armenia can save more than $360 million annually, equivalent to almost 4.5% of its 2009 GDP. Energy efficiency and the use of Armenia's own energy sources are national security issues. One of the prospective projects for the development of our own energy resource is the construction of the Lori Baird hydropower station, which can have a 66 megawatt capacity. The government expects the World Bank's support for the implementation of this project. Armenia's high-voltage transmission network, too, needs investments. The network is state-owned and has not yet received due attention since the Soviet years.
The 110, 220, 1,000-volt transmission lines are like the arteries of the whole energy system. If their reliability is low, it will have an immediate impact on the reliability of the entire energy system. One of our main tasks is to rehabilitate these lines.
Almost every neighborhood experiences power outages for 1 or 2 hours several times a month. These are called planned outages. The electric networks of Armenia is carrying out rehabilitation work at the substations.
There are problems in the system, and we are not always right. And I apologize in advance to those people who experience supply interruptions. But this is work which we must do. Works in the 10 substations around Yerevan lead to a whole range of works that needs to be done in the distribution grid of Yerevan, where equipment and regimes are being changed. We have to carry out these planned outages. Every year we develop new service standards for the distribution grids, and these standards also assume investments. Sometimes, when an outage lasts a little long, I begin panicking. Oh God, could it be possible? Could it happen again? I don't want to live a life in humiliation. I want to open the tap and have hot and cold water running anytime.
Armenia has a well-established energy sector. The institutional reforms that were implemented have created a solid basis for future development and yielded tangible results. However, the sector faces serious challenges which may jeopardize its sustainability. If no measures are taken today, Armenia will face an electricity deficit again. The energy sector needs serious investments to reinforce the implemented reforms and secure a bright and warm future for the country.